Welcome to another episode of You Can't Say That, where we dive into things that you're thinking about but nobody else is saying in the health and fitness industry. I'm your host, Jo. Sitting with my good friend, Jason Pizzino, ex-vegan, I'm going to call him that. And we're going to discuss something that's a bit of a hot topic, and it is the transition out of veganism, changing your belief system and having a bit of an identity crisis around that. And how to manage that, how to cope with that. Jason, who was a vegan for 6.5 years and was very heavily involved or present on social media platforms, mainly on YouTube, centered around veganism and vegan lifestyle. Yeah, let's start with why you got into it, why you got out of it, the transition out.
Yeah, well, I guess it's... Thanks very much for having me first.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. I guess the first thing was, why did we get into it in the first place? And I think when we speak about it, most of us came from the same area. It was either like health or the environment or the animals and those sort of things. So we ended up creating this belief structure around those three particular topics. And throughout the journey, I guess you started to believe more and more into it because of the confirmation bias, and you found more information to support your beliefs. And throughout the journey, I guess something else must have been in the back of our minds, or, if I speak from my own personal experience, there was something that I was thinking of, that things didn't begin to line up anymore in regards to health, maybe the environment, maybe also with the animals, what it is that we're here to do. And so that's what led me out of veganism. But talking about how that is perceived by the public, especially from me putting some things out on YouTube and Instagram with a public image, you could say, and then the backlash within the industry. It almost is an industry, veganism. Within that belief system, I guess it kind of holds you back because you are scared of what people are potentially going to say. But you don't see that happen in other areas. If you believe that eating eggs is good for you one day, but the next day it's not. There's not like the egg cult coming after you saying you should be eating eggs. It's what you should be doing.
We both met through the vegan scene or community, differing thoughts about, is this aligned with our values anymore? And I think what people's perception would be afterwards was a strong consideration of mine coming out of veganism, is that I was had a strong view on what was healthy, what was right for the earth and for the animals, and then to turn around and then start saying, well, actually, my health is being compromised. I don't know that I'm really aligning with they protest their beliefs, and I'm not sure necessarily that they really are matched to my values. And I know that a lot of vegans will probably turn around and say, well, don't you care about the animals or the planet? But I think the more that you dive in, I think the more that you can have a different view. I guess being in a more public eye in that vegan community, I just wanted you to touch on, I guess, your experience with public backlash or people having particular comments about your transition out.
I guess we can all experience that on different levels. So like mine would have been that, I've got a bit more public, more people looking at my content, as opposed to maybe you guys watching, or someone watching that they've only told like their close group of friends, and maybe they post a bit about it on Facebook or Instagram, and then realizing that it's not for them anymore. But because of the way that we have expressed our views and our opinions of a particular ideal, you kind of almost feel like, oh, whoops, I feel like I need to backpedal now. And so that can then hold us back from actually saying and doing what it is that we feel is right within us. That's kind of...
Yeah, that's absolutely what I had experienced, because I know you are quite vocal in your, like, the way that you express your values and your opinions. And I think that's when people, even if they weren't vegan or not, look at that and go, well, weren't you so vocal about you know,
Best
eggs
wallet.
being the worst thing on earth and you eating like 6 of them in an omelette the following day for breakfast. That was something I experienced for sure. I have like a very strong-minded persona, and to then have to put my hand up and say, actually my values are, I wouldn't say wrong, but they've changed, was the biggest process for me coming out of...
Do you feel like you got humbled by the experience?
Yes, yeah, to a degree, absolutely. But also the...
Me too. I'm
Yeah.
humbled.
That's... Yeah, you heard it first.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to touch again on the benefits that you experience from coming from vegan to no longer vegan.
We can say the health was a positive benefit. Feel a lot better. You know, we can all argue on that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. In terms of the mindset, it definitely feels like a weight has been lifted, as opposed to trying to believe something should be so right that I have to go and find a ton of science to back me up, talking about the vegan space, that is. So, you know, like plant foods are the best, and that's the only thing that we can live by. Being able to release that pressure of keeping us within the space, you know, the confines of the vegan world, that every answer must lead back to veganism, it definitely feels like I have more mental clarity and more space. And I said that going into veganism, I feel so like I have mental clarity. So I was like, can we differentiate that? You know, I guess that's what we're trying to do here. But I feel like it's just living by your beliefs and trying not to be held back by certain views that you have limited yourself with.
We had this discussion as I was coming out of veganism, as I was coming out.
Well,
but it was kind of like that. It was like, it's like you experience life like brand new again. It's like you have this clean slate. That is my experience anyway, coming out of...
You felt like it going in as well, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, yeah, I guess you get sort of bogged down because a few answers don't line up, and then you keep trying to find the answer to make it line up. You tell yourself that life is so long, and then you just get stuck. And so the only way to continue in that lie is to push it further and further to other people, push it further out into society. And then when you have to realise it's not right for you, that's when you get humbled and think, oh crap, okay, let's, you know, get ourselves out of this and just go back to letting things happen and not putting pressure and rules in place in order to make ourselves believe something. And
that pressure and those rules are like, for me particularly, was that was the light bulb moment. I came into veganism from like a health perspective, thinking it would restore my health coming out of like fitness modeling competition preps, which was very heavily focused on restricted calories, restricted in the food groups that I could eat, and fell right into veganism pretty much straight away into veganism, which I thought was, you know, at the time, fresh eyes. I was no longer limited to chicken and broccoli. I could have all this vegan food. And then it wasn't, you know, it took me 3.5, almost 4 years to realise that it was just another form of restriction. I had these new food rules, but...
It's an easy set of rules that you can then throw on things.
Absolutely.
And so I have to live by this, and these rules are great because they are healthy, because this doctor said so.
Yes, that's what it was, and that was my agenda that I was pushing on people, was like, well, there's science to back that. So the fact that I could use the animals and planet type thing.
Then you can play on the emotional side.
Then I can play on the emotional side, and then people wouldn't question my diet choice if I then played on the emotion side. So suddenly I had this excuse to be restrictive without it sounding like disordered eating, you know, without people going, oh, that she's having an issue. But deep down, I'm like, oh, what a shame I can't eat the same foods as you because it's not vegan. So when I realized it was just, I used another form of restriction, that's when I said, this is why I'm having health issues or concerns, like even mentally, and that reintroducing animal products, not only physically for my physical health, but for my like emotional, mental health, was an important like transition out.
I think I came in from something to do with like looking at numbers in regards to farming and whatnot. I wanted to have my own farm, and I couldn't see how that would work. But I wasn't eating like a really balanced omnivorous diet. It was a lot of chicken and broccoli as well. So I was like, that didn't make sense. But staying in it, then I developed the complex of, I'm much greater than the next person, like most vegans are. Not all of them, of course, but it's like you're doing better for the planet, you're doing better for this, you're doing better for the liberation of humanity, yada yada. And so you sort of put yourself on a pedestal. And then to get humbled from that pedestal, you realise that, okay, life isn't only about this, and that we need to work a bit better together. I guess there was like a lot of learnings about what our personality is like, and why that, why these sorts of people tend to lean towards veganism and get sucked into it, because it gives you those excuses and those reasons. And so to get yourself out means you have to change yourself as a person and how you conduct yourself in public society.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you're going to grow as a person, because
Yes.
I couldn't see that happening within that space. So some people can do it in veganism because they're not as, immature as myself or you with those traits. Yeah. So be it, it's not about you have to have this diet or you don't, but recognizing that, and that we can see that a lot of people use those traits within that space and then hold on to them because they believe they can by saying, playing on the emotional cards, that you're not looking after the animals or the planet, and so they can keep being that person within that space. And there's a good reason I'm doing quote unquote reason for it for the guys on the podcast. So I think it's a great experience overall within that space. And then I guess the learnings out of it is what we just covered, but then how to do that, I think that's like an individual process. Yes. Some of the things we did was just on reflection, like we've just talked about. We both had to reflect on who we were and get humbled, basically just get publicly shamed out of that space. And if you're not willing to go through that, do it in a more quiet space of your own, come out of it slowly, because I'd still get DMs from people who are, I don't know if they're still vegan, but they were vegan at the time that we were talking, and they don't know how to come out because they will get harassed and bullied by their friends and other people online. Yes. And so then they can't live truly by who they are. So if you're in that space, you've got to figure out a way, otherwise the cycle will continue. Yeah, and I think that comes with really that reflection within yourself and being very confident and clear about your values and being, I guess, accepting of that before you can start to come out, if so to speak. Found myself, that it was more my ego's going to be hurt because there were people, I can see them subconsciously saying, I told you so. Yeah. But fortunately, overall, the experience wasn't so bad. No, it was actually much better than I'd ever experienced, expected to. And if you have compassionate people around you, they should be supportive. Even if you've given them so much crap over the years, they'll still be there. Yeah. That's what I found. Yes. That's what you found. Everyone that I've spoken to that's actually come out, they've also found that too. Yeah. So I think that's a great place to end it on. Yeah, I think so. On a positive note. Possible. Yeah, absolutely. It's possible. It's probably not as bad as you're expecting it to be, and the experience overall is such a positive thing and mentally freeing. So thank you for staying and being on the podcast today, Jason. It's been a good experience. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and also see Jason's channel or follow mine, all of the good stuff. Jump on the above, get onto Joe's, and leave your comments and questions down below if you have anything around this topic.